what we're going to really tackle now is this idea of breaking barriers. Breaking barriers. And it's interesting, we were running some numbers over there. If you imagine if you woke up every day and instead of having a mirror on your ceiling like most people do in their bedrooms, don't they? Oh, well, I read that in a book somewhere. You had the words, what will I do better today than what I did yesterday? And every single day that you woke up, you saw that. You just saw that. And let's say you're going to live to 90 years of age. Do you know, outside of childhood, how many times you would have asked yourself that question right up until the age of 90? Who can take a guess? That was a very interesting point. So it's best to have one in your bedroom and that of the others. Or other. Others or other? We're getting a measure of you, and there's a banker listening. And remember, he said we fund your behavior, not opportunity. About 30,000 times. 30,000 times. 30,000 times. And in many ways, when you start getting success in business, there are 3 phases that we all travel through. 3 phases. The first is you start business mostly because you can't get a job. Yeah, really, and I really mean it. There are studies to show that when you emerge into the economy, the first thing you try and do is get a job. And if you have a personality that fits well within that environment, you can thrive and do really well. But if you can't, out of necessity, in order to put food on the table, you start a hustle. That's the very early stage of a business. You start the hustle. And the hustle turns into a business, hopefully over time, after you've made enough mistakes, after you've applied yourself long enough, after you have stuck to the game. And with that hustle turning into a business, your needs get met. You can put food on the table. Yeah? And you might be able to put a roof over your home. And you might be able to feed a family. And when those needs get met, what happens next? You have wants. And it's so interesting, because when I speak to business owners, on average, how long do you think someone who started a business has their car for before they buy a new car? Take a guess. 10? 15? 15? 3? I need to get into your industry. 5. On average, it's 14 years, 8 months. They will drive that car for 14 years, 8 months before they replace it. And what happens then is your needs have been met, because in effect this is discretionary spend. Then you have wants, and you want to try and improve your lifestyle. But what happens when your needs and wants are met? What happens next? Because there's one of 2 paths you can then take. Building a business, scaling a business, and staying on the edge of competition means you've got to constantly be thinking about the edge of competition. You're constantly investing. Am I right, Don? It never stops. Constantly investing. You don't achieve an investment platform and then ride the wave. It never stops. And typically what happens is most people who don't go through the 3rd phase of self-motivation eventually mature, dip, and decline. The others who can find the 3rd phase of motivation scale to heights never imagined achievable before. And that 3rd phase of motivation is having a purpose, finding purpose, meaning, and value in what you do that goes well beyond the money. So breaking barriers is an important factor, because breaking barriers says you're not doing what you're doing simply for economy. You're doing it for what will eventually be a greater and bigger purpose. And the benefit of that is it stretches you as an individual way beyond the best you've ever been before. It keeps you on that edge. It creates a really full life, from what I've seen. So with that, I'd like to invite up my next panel, and we're going to start off with Don Bailey, CEO of Expand Design. Would you like to come up, Don? Don't be shy. You're not one known to be shy. Please take a seat. The Levi's a bit tight. Fatima, where's Fatima? Oh, there we are. Fatima Amara from Trade and Investment KZN. And Zanele, oh, there you are.
Sorry, it's Amra.
Amra, what did I say?
Amara. I don't mind it.
Oh, really? Amara sounds almost like a fashion brand.
Far from it.
That's where I got confused, you see. And Zanele Komo, CEO of the Durban Chamber of Commerce. CGO. What does the G stand for?
Chief Growth Officer.
Chief Growth Officer.
Yeah.
Okay, I like that. That is a nice title. And then finally, Val, where are you? Valencia Mnyonya. Let me get this right. Mnomia. There we go. FNB Commercial Sustainability Lead. You know, right to the end there. Don, how long have you been in the game for? And what does your business do exactly?
So we make textiles from yarn. So there's a yarn supplier there. The textile business we make all polyester from ripstop canvas for the safari military industry, which we export into Africa. Some PPE stuff. Glad I'm not in retail, by the way, after all that commentary. And then we make for this industry, which is digital printing for soft signage, and we export it around the world. So we're from yarn to banner, as we call it, yeah.
And we export it around the world.
Yeah. Durban is the center of the world, if you look at a map. You go up, you go to Europe, you go that way, you go to US, that way you go to Australia. That's why we're based here.
So we're going to get into understanding how you export around the world. Fatima, Trade and Investment KZN. You know what? I used to sit on the Enactus board for about 10 years. And Enactus is a program that runs on universities, encouraging students from all the universities, the institutions of higher learning, to undertake entrepreneurial projects and then compete to see who had the best projects, and that university would represent South Africa against 86 other countries. In the 10-year period, the University of KZN won the South African contingent 8 times. So there is some magic in the soil here. How do you bring it to life? What does KZN, Trade and Investment KZN do?
Yeah, can you hear me, guys? We're a government entity.
Hold it a bit closer.
We're a government entity. We're funded by the Provincial Department of Economic Development and Tourism and Environmental Affairs, which is the money that comes from the provincial treasury. So we funded to drive trade and investment in the province.
Excellent. Good. Zanele, CGO. I like that. CGO, Growth Officer. Durban Chamber, the Durban Chamber of Commerce and Industry. In a nutshell, what do you guys do?
If you look at our tagline, we call ourselves the voice of business. So what we do is we advocate for business communities from corporate all the way to SMMEs and informal sector. Our role really is to make sure that businesses in eThekwini thrive, meaning we represent you as different businesses, because we understand that there are certain rules and regulations that every business adheres to, and you need an advocate. And the Durban Chamber of Commerce and Industry is that advocate for your business, if you're a member.
Excellent. We have a sense of what you mean, and we're going to clarify it. So, Valencia, was it BlackRock? Familiar with BlackRock? Who's familiar with BlackRock? Jay? biggest single equity investor in the world. What is it? $3 trillion of assets under management. What's his name? The CEO there? No. He wishes. It slips my mind now for a moment. In 20... Yeah, Larry Fink. Thank you. That's right. Was it 2018 or 20? It was 2018. He wrote a letter to all his investors and investees. And he turned around and said, if you don't have a response baked into your business strategy for climate change, we will, in the next year, divest from your business and require it in future around all future investments. Is sustainability really a thing?
I think more than anything, being here in KZN has one of the provinces that's been severely affected by climate change. So it is a thing. And it's something that I think at different phases of your business, you can look at it from a different angle. So in South Africa, we went through a journey where it was first introduced to us in a form where it was a direct response to what the challenges we were facing in terms of energy with load shedding. So it was more like a knee-jerk reaction or a begrudge response to that so that you can have energy certainty. But now it's become a core of business strategy in terms of it's a way that one can look at saving costs because it's a cheaper form of energy. And also if you're looking to scale up your business, become an exporter, it's one of the key things that investors are looking for because it's one of the drivers for us to ensure that we have a future and an environment that will enable us to thrive in the future. So I think if you live in KZN, you're one of people that can bear witness at what climate change and the devastation that climate change can do. So it's a very important, and it's part, if you want to grow and you want to scale, you must have a sustainability strategy for your business.
Excellent. Okay, so what we're going to do is we are going to use Don as our case study. And Don, we're going to go right back to the early stages. Before you exported anything anywhere, you established in KZN. So you started over here. You took your surfboard with your slops and said, I'm going to start a signage business. From those early stages, what did you need to do to, as a one-person business, scale up to a point where the first barrier you breached was that of KZN into the rest of South Africa? And then phase two is how did you get into the overseas markets? So let's just start the first. How many years have you been running for, Don?
27.
27. So what is 27 divided by 3? Anyone?
6.
Anyone? Anyone?
8.
8
8.5, 9.
Okay, we're going to run in 9-year increments. Let's do it in 10-year increments. The first 10 years, what were the key factors? How did you get from idea to a point where you could produce value? And then I'm going to say, what did the investment policies in KZN enable? Did the chamber have a role? And if not, what could they have done? And was sustainability baked in?
So the business started by pure default. They always say careful with ideas because they slap you in the face. And we were making actually beach shelters for the Australian market for Cancer Association and Kmart. Some of you supplied Kmart. And dealing with printing companies, someone in an agency said, can't you make a signboard out of the same principle? So we made one and happened to bump into a guy from MTN. In those days, it was a big name and everyone was pumping. And he said, well, that sounds like a brilliant idea. How much? And we spat a price out. I'm a cost of management accountant. It means nothing because it's always, what will the customer pay? And we threw out a number and he said, oh, that's cheap. I thought, hang on, you're going to make 10 of these tins for one of those. That's very easy. And overnight, we pivoted the business. And we started knew nothing about printing, which was a good thing because it pushed us into technology, into digital printing. And it started. And it just, in those days, it's always find something unique. It's very hard. We were lucky. And so the product started, and a bit later we had the flying banner. Everyone knows a teardrop banner. You've probably seen it. And there was a colleague who worked with my father years ago. Brother owned a fishing rod company, took a fishing rod, bent it, and put a piece of fabric on it, and we patented it. And that now today, if you play PlayStation with your children, or not on your own, you'll notice it on the racetracks. We've had it on the North Pole, and it just started with a fishing rod idea.
Did you guys bring that in?
Yeah, that was us. So the folding A-frame and flying banner were our inventions. Yeah.
That's amazing. You see, KZN is famous. We're famous for it. Can you protect that invention?
We did, and I can tell you now, if you go to court in South Africa, the only people that come rich are your lawyers. I've been to the pellet division twice in Bloemfontein, sweated in that place, won, and never seen a cent. So if I did it again, and you asked that first 9 years, I would have just spent it on sales and marketing. It's the biggest mistake I've made. I poo-pooed sales, thinking it's so easy because you had a novel product, but it's the hardest thing to do. Because we talk about being bullied, and in sales, that's all you are. You're bullied. You deal with rejection every day, and it's a hard thing to wake every day and sell. And if I could have learned that art a lot earlier, I would have, think, gone a lot further. But the export part came and...
No, we're going to get to the export part.
Okay.
Right.
Still
So now we have a business. Yeah. From a hustle, we turned into a business. We then started to supply nationally. We had 1 or 2 points of distinction and invention.
Yeah.
But we started to really understand what business we were in. Fatima, Trade and Investment KZN, what role could you play in the first 10 years of Don's life?
Not 1 to 10.
Yeah, not age 1 to 10. The first 10 years of establishing that business.
I think the first 10 years is he's obviously in somewhat of a development phase, even though he's been in business for 10 years. We're talking about 10-year increments. Mm-hmm. So to get to the next phase of his business, Trade and Investment would obviously look at facilitating funding through financial institutions. That's the one. If he wants to look at export markets, we have a facility that we use, that we've purchased from the Northwest University. It's called the decision-making model. We can then give you data in terms of where in the world this product, if there is a product or similar to what he's making, can be sold to different markets. If it's saturated, we'll be able to tell you that. We'll tell you where there's potential opportunities. And then that's the one leg of it, that, the market access. The other access is that if he's a new exporter, we would need to then take him through the 101 export training course. So that tells you exactly, in terms of your HS code, where you reside and what are the details you need to take care of to become an exporter.
Would that also help understanding cross-border tax complexity?
Absolutely.
Because that is a tricky space. It is scary. Huh?
Tariffs. It depends on the agreements, the trade agreements across the world and who you're supplying.
And you're up to date within your organization. You're up to date with all the trade agreements.
Yes, we deal a lot with the DSM model. Is quite interesting because it does have a lag of information, which is generally 12 months to 18 months. And what it does, it not only talks about markets, also talks about trade barriers, opportunities. Also, it gives you a bit of country information, which would, okay, let's look at, I'll give you an example where there's problems at the moment. If you want to supply, say, Congo, for example, it'll be able to tell you that, look, there's trouble happening there. It's a high-risk market, blah, blah, blah. But it will give you a lot of detail to make the right decisions.
Do you have ChatGPT engaged?
We do. We also have Grammarly.
Oh, very good. Okay, so Don's built the business up through hook or by crook, by simply responding to the needs of customers, which we all do in the early phases. In the early stages, you want to be everything to everyone in order to get cash flow coming in. And then eventually you start to learn what sets you apart and which customers are buying more frequently from you. So you can start positioning your business more effectively. From there, I went to go and speak to Fatima And Fatima starts giving me bigger ideas and bigger insights into where I possibly could export my product. But in the first 10 years, I would have gone to Zanele, right? Especially in the early stages. What would the chamber have helped me with in the first 10 years?
I think obviously the journey of entrepreneurship is a challenging one. Each and every day you're faced with different challenges. And where we come in as a chamber through educating and making sure that you understand, firstly, the kind of business that you are in. What is your market like? And how do we do that? We've got 20 business forums that are sector specific. So we've got one which is focused purely on manufacturing. We've got business, we've got women in business, youth in business. And through there, what we try and do is bring in experts from different fields who will talk about, okay, you've identified your market, you want to know how hard is it, what am I going to be faced with? And that's where we encourage you to participate and listen. And obviously, we give you also, link you up with mentors who are able to guide you through this process and make sure that you get to a place where you are a bit comfortable as a business and you understand that, okay, so this is what's possibly going to happen, and this is how I am going to get over that hurdle and move on to the next phase of my business, because the ideal goal is to become bigger and better. And as you grow, there are more challenges. And as you move on in that 10 years of your business and you get on to the next phase, where now you need also policy and advocacy intervention, because as the business gets bigger, there are more policy and advocacy interventions that you need. And that's where us as the chamber, we come in and we advocate on your behalf. Whether it's a legislation that's got to do with clothing and textile and manufacturing, and you need us to lobby, starting from, because we live in KwaZulu-Natal, I'll say starting from the city, moving from the city, which is municipality, then we're moving into provincial, and even taking it to national. And I think most of you would have heard of the big project that we launched last year in February, actually in these premises, with President Ramaphosa, the Presidential Etegwini Working Group, which is us as the chamber really doing that and helping your business to move on to the next phase and become bigger and succeed and prosper. So we come in on a lot of levels, even with especially this industry, on international relations. As the chamber, what we do is we look at different countries internationally where we think, okay, there's a potential for us to do business there, and there's a potential for businesses here in KwaZulu-Natal, in eThekwini, to prosper, to trade, etc. And we open that door by approaching the embassies, approaching the different chambers. Like, for example, this afternoon, we're meeting with the USA Embassy. I mean, I think it's a hot topic for all of us. We've got quite a list of a couple of things where we feel we need intervention, we need support, because we see how things are going and where things could possibly be going, and looking forward, we've got a goer, etc.
Good, thank you. And then what happened? Don, can I ask you a difficult question? Who do you bank with?
Personally, RMB.
Okay, so it's a safe question.
Yeah, don't ask the business. Jay's going to fix it. He made me huge promises. So.
Val, you bumped into Don, he bumped into you. He heard that FNB is prepared to open up an account for the business. He realizes you're in sustainability. What are you going to be telling him to look out for as he scales and grows his business? Why sustainability in its own right will give him opportunities that, if he adopts the right principles and practices, open doors or bring down operating costs?
Sure. I think part of the thing that we want to do is be a partner to a Don as the business throughout the journey of the business. So one of the things that we've gone out to market to do is to vet installers and EPCs. So your EPCs are the people that look off the suppliers that do the installations of your solars. And as we know, as this market is fairly new in the industry, it's quite saturated. So as a bank, when you approach us to finance a solar, what we do is we take the time to vet the supplier for you, so that at least there's some sort of due diligence that you can rely on. And then as the bank, we then also have different mechanisms that we can finance your energy needs, whether it's through ABF or through unlocking your commercial property.
What's ABF?
Asset-based financed. So that's the most popular form of financing solar, is through ABF, because it's quick, it's easy. But you can also, if you own a property, you can also unlock equity in there, and then we can finance it for you. And as your factory grows and it gets bigger and your energy needs become bigger, then we are able to then reassess to say your energy needs are now becoming bigger. Perhaps you don't want to, because you want to focus your cash flow into your core business, and we can then come in and take care of your energy needs through the FNB Energy Company that's been recently launched. And we can look into going into a PPA agreement. So basically what we then do, if you start needing a system that's 300 kilowatts, or you spending over 3 million rand on electricity, we can come in with our technical partners, design a solution for you, and then once you go ahead, we can show you how much you could potentially save by getting off grid and using solar. And then we take care of the maintenance, we take care of the insurance, and you just essentially buy the electricity for us. So we want to go through the entire journey for us. And we've got a lot of exciting...
So it lets you keep your eye on business.
Yes.
The business of business, what you're good at. Okay, so let's pause there. Don, you're 10 years in. You're now in Gauteng, yeah, Western Cape, right around the country. No, right around the country. This is a commodity. It's a low value item, isn't it? Relatively speaking. How do you export? How do you actually get into a market and compete with a local provider that should be able to make this as cheap as chips?
I think it's the joys of being young and dumb. I basically packed my bags, got engaged. I'd worked in London at a sports marketing firm for a company called Bell Pottinger. Don't tell anyone.
Oh, my word.
And I knew all this marketing, and I thought, hang on, I know the market. And I literally packed up, left a partner, and I went across to Europe, or into London, and set up, and thought I just started hit the road selling. Just got every contract I had, every business card I had, and just started dialing and speaking to people, and got in my car in those days, the map on the steering wheel, and crisscrossed England. And then I did a trade show, which in those days DTI sponsored you. And that's when I started meeting the Germans, the Spanish, French, etc. And that's how I got agents across Europe. And yeah, but I didn't know what I was doing.
But in terms of cost of product, were you manufacturing here and then exporting and supplying within those markets?
Yeah, in those days we definitely were well positioned. It's become more of a commodity, as you say, but we're still very in the game there on price. We don't make the cheapest ones. FNB buys the cheapest ones, I've noticed, but we don't make the cheapest ones, and we're proud of that fact, because at the end of the day, what we say here is you work so hard. Look at the two different colors of these two banners. Just saying, Normie, is that you work so hard to build your brand, which is your biggest item on your balance sheet, and yet you go and throw away it at the end. That's what we try.
You know what they say? An entrepreneur lives a life, a motto. Always be selling.
Yeah.
Always be selling.
Yeah.
Okay, so with that, it was like pavement pounding. It was grinding away. It was sweating away. You got access into the European market. That must have scaled up production locally.
Very much so.
Did that create challenges locally with the manufacturing processes?
Very much so. And also the technology was moving so fast. And I always say the leading edge is the bleeding edge. So we were the first digital printers in this country, and yet there was no technical skill. Xerox made these machines. They were terrible things. And they arrived and they left. There was no technician. So we had to pull out the manual and learn ourselves, which was a great thing in the long term. But always being at that leading edge has been tough because you make mistakes. Lots of machines have come and gone over that time. But yeah, it was rapid growth. When I came back in 2001, there were 48 of us, and today there's over 300 of us. Yeah.
So Fatima, in those early stages, if Donna turned around and said to you, you know, we need these big printing machines, this is the opportunity we can provide in terms of creating local jobs, given the markets that I've opened overseas, would you be able to give direction, advice? Would you be able to go into that little black box algorithm and say, well, here are the different providers, this is where you likely can get the best deal, and we can give you support in that?
Yes, I think at the time, Don had, is it Don? Yeah. Sorry. When he wanted his machinery or to upscale his machinery, there were incentives from DTIC around some of the machinery, and he would get back, 50%, or maybe sometimes more, or different types of incentives. So I think, and that was to encourage manufacturing locally in South Africa. I just also want to point out one other thing that Don has that's a big advantage for his manufacturing and exporting, is that he is locally producing his fabric or his textile, which is far different from the clothing sector or ready-to-wear sector, because all the fabric or the textiles that you buy to manufacture goods here are imported. And we don't have vertical mills. Dagama, Frame Group, they all closed down. They're vertical mill because they don't have enough mass to produce it, to have it running 24/7. Yes, so I just want to say that was his competitive edge.
Okay, that's really interesting.
Yeah.
Would you have been able to open up points of entry for Don into Europe, practically speaking, or not? If he turned around and he said, sorry, Zanella, if he turned around and he said, listen, I've got some traction in Germany, how do I open up the rest of Europe? Practically speaking, could the chamber do anything, practically?
Practically speaking, yes, because like I mentioned earlier, under our international relations division, we do exactly that. So if you are a member of the Durban Chamber and you've identified opportunities in different countries internationally, what we provide and what we do through the other chamber in the other countries is Don would give us a list and say, okay, I've seen Paris, Italy, etc. And we would reach out to the chambers in that country and say, okay, we've got a member, he's Don, this is what he does. He's looking to meet up with these different companies. They must be legit. They must be looking to invest in, obviously, a South African company, and it must be mutually beneficial. And what would happen is that those particular countries that Don had identified would come back to us, their chambers, and give us a list and say, okay, these are the different companies who are members of their chambers that they deal with. And then we connect Don up and we do something called a letter of introduction, where we would introduce Don's business, would give a brief profile, and then obviously now Don has to do what he does best. And it's just a matter of going across and having those meetings. But already he knows, leaving South Africa, that if he's got a week to spend in the different countries, here he's got a meeting, over here, it's confirmed, it's legit, and he's comfortable that he's going to meet people whom he might do business with, depending on, obviously, how those deals go about.
Yeah, of course. It's always up to you in the end.
Yeah.
Val, would you be able to give Don an insight into the unusual economics that he could enjoy being a South African manufacturer selling into, for example, Germany, with regard to decarbonization benefits and points? In other words, helping him produce a language around his product that bleeds into and plays into sustainability, climate sustainability benefits for customers in Europe who don't have to have the product manufactured in Europe with the cost on the climate in Europe. Would you be able to help interpret those languages for Don?
So it's something that we're currently working on as the bank because we've identified it as a need, especially in the mid-corporate SME space, where their reporting or the reporting requirements that are required, they also differ from country to country. So we are now trying to build a tool that will enable us South African companies to use in order to facilitate that kind of reporting that is required. It's something that we're currently on testing phases on, and we're hoping to roll it out within this current year as well. So it's something that we're very passionate about, to help SMEs to bridge that gap, because it is quite an important thing, yet there's no currently a standardized way of reporting. So it's something that we're currently working on, and I'd say but watch the space, and it will definitely be rolled out in the near
Fantastic.
future.
Good. So within our audience over here, who is looking to get beyond the border? Who's interested in exporting? So what do you do? Jerseys. So are you manufacturing? Is it a CMT outfit making?
We have our own computerized knitting machines, and we bring the yarn and do production here in South Africa.
In South Africa. And what is the biggest challenge you face to export into, which markets are you looking at?
Well, we're currently supplied to South African chain stores. Okay, our main customer is all based here, but we're looking forward to expand our market to Europe or America. But currently, we have our biggest challenge now because our material actually are imported. We don't get material here. My biggest challenge currently, I would say, is shipping and port delayed. That is our biggest challenge for now.
Fantastic. Don, is anything practical you can do about that? Okay, so the biggest challenge is we're manufacturing knitwear, selling into retailers here, interested in exporting and getting into Europe and the US with this particular product suite. But the big problem is raw material supply. And then the second are all the port delays that make your ability to supply the needs of a customer compromised.
Yeah, I feel the port delays with you on our textiles. We get paid in bill of lading, so it's meant to be a COD business. It's not. It can be up to 6 weeks. We can sit here waiting for a container to be loaded. So find the CEO of Transnet and put a gun to his head. That's all I can recommend there. But I mean, for exporters, it's incredible. Europe loves doing business. So does the US. These trade shows are incredible tools. Before COVID, they started dipping off. People weren't attending. I think after COVID, all been locked up, their attendance is far greater at trade shows. And that is your best way into market because we're all oversold. I mean, when you go to the States, the phone rings incessantly. Not people phoning to buy your product, but to sell something to you. So, when you do that outbound phone call, you're one of those as well. So it's very hard to break down the door. And I find trade shows have been our biggest success. You'll be able to engage face-to-face, the old school selling. So get out there and get to the trade shows.
Fatima, would you be able to organize those trade shows? Would you be able to put together, let's say, a series of KZN-based businesses? We find, what, Jay? Should we find 50 KZN-based businesses? They go through a process. We identify the top 10 or 15, and we identify the most appropriate trade shows for them to produce their wares, show their wares. Would that be something KZN Invest can do?
Absolutely. But I think we just need to take a step back. The type of client you want to get into a trade show must be able to source their raw material locally firstly, especially if you're looking at the US markets. With the AGOA agreement, and I'll touch on that now because it's very important, the AGOA agreement states categorically that in the clothing and textile industry, if you don't produce your fabrics locally, you can't export to the US. That's a no-go zone. Don, on the other hand, he produces his fabrics locally or his textiles, so he has the opportunity to sell in the US markets. But then going back to trade and investment, we have a strategic relationship with DTIC at a national level. We do have a calendar of events that DTIC would identify the year before for the following year. Starting now we'll start April 2025. And They will identify maybe 5 or 6 trade shows or pavilions, they would call them, and they would offer space to companies, different categories, high end, middle income, lower end, depending on what they produce, and also depending on how much they make in terms of turnover, if DTI could sponsor part of the pavilion. So that happens. TIKZN, if we have budget, which is very rare, we can then also come in and pay for, it's called a scheme where we can pay up to 50% of your travel, either accommodation and your flight. So in total, we can do that. If there's budget, please no one come to me right now because we don't have any budget.
No, but hang on a sec, because there's a real opportunity over here. If we genuinely want to shift the needle in this industry out of KZN, the if has to become there is. We can't have if. Think of it this way. If we put together a campaign and we identified 15 businesses that would qualify based on the criteria you put down, and we identify the appropriate trade show, and within that, Zanele, we come to you and say, open up these chambers and these introductions, so beyond the trade show,
There's B2Bs.
the business owners who are going to be representing their wares at these trade shows will actually have meetings set up. And I'm going to look to you, Val, to produce for me the arguments that help me articulate my value proposition relevantly within the regulatory environment of Europe or the United States, linked to sustainability and climate, which is a big factor in this industry. There is a real but there's a piece missing. You might be able to answer it, or Jay, you might be able to answer it. Because if we do that, and of the 15 businesses, 10 of them find business in those foreign markets, how does FNB enable the financial transactions? Do you have banking partners in those markets? What would my financial environment be like?
Indeed, we have an entire foreign exchange international division for the bank, and we correspond throughout the world. So we can facilitate payments anywhere in the world, and in particular, with Europe and the US. So very definitively. The other thing in the UK is that First Rand, our holding company, we own a bank in the UK called Aldermore, and we are fleshing out more as we speak in terms of functionality. So for us to be able to help from a South African context into a cross-border, but also in particular jurisdictions we have representation.
Okay, so guys, that is a fantastic way to conclude this panel, if you think about it. There's a real opportunity over here for us to turn all the talk of today into a very practical, executable plan to grow 15 qualifying businesses. We have the on-ground raw insights of what will work and what won't work to get rid of any theory. Don, you can advise us on that? Yeah?
Yeah, and I mean, I always thought in business, the financing model was the 3 Fs. Friends, families, and fools. And I realized now it's 4 Fs, friends, family, and fools, and FNB.
Very good. But I really think that there's an opportunity to take this beyond the session today, to organize a discussion amongst ourselves, and to see if indeed we could pull something like this across, pull something like this together for opportunities on KZN-based businesses. It would be a fantastic point of departure. Before I close off the panel, any last thoughts from the audience? Any questions specifically to the experience that sits on the panel that might be able to give you an insight or answer? Can you speak up, please, sir?
Hi guys, how are you? My name is Paul, and Fatima, you mentioned that locally based fabrics for the US market. Currently, in my business, we don't use local based fabrics. So where does the opportunity lie for someone like me that wants to get into export? I am exporting in 2 smaller countries in Africa at the moment, but we want to see, oh well, I want to see my company exporting to US and the likes of Europe. So where does that leave me?
Nowhere right now. To be very honest with you, don't even try the US market if you're not making your fabric locally, your textiles locally. The AGOA agreement is specific. We will only accept product from South Africa, and this is going to change, I think, in the next couple of days or weeks. We don't know what's happening now because Trump is erratic. He's also got his own agendas, and we're watching the space. So for now, you can't do much with the US.
And Europe?
Europe, yes, you can. It depends. It's competitive. If you're competitive in terms of your product with turnaround times, your fabric is unique, or your textile is unique, your design is unique, and the fact that you are competitive on price, you could look at Europe. You could, for me, and we need to start looking into Africa, the African continent. Am I going too long here, or carry on?
You've got another 32
Seconds. Okay. So the African continent is our focus. The Africa free trade or continental free trade area is important. Look it up, check it out, and understand. And if you come to us and ask us where markets in Africa, we can give you that information. But Southern Africa has maybe 300 million people. Why aren't we using that as a stepping stone? And the restrictions are not as great. In fact, there are no restrictions with the new trade agreement in place. So consider that as one of your markets.
But I think, Fatima, the main challenges for Africa is your payments and trading with those guys.
Yeah.
I've experienced it already, but
Sure.
we've been lucky. We've teamed up with some nice guys.
And maybe FNB could look at ways on how you can make that or unblock those challenges you face. But the other challenge you're going to face is logistics, transportation, export, port delays, all of that. Those are real issues that are currently being examined at a national level through the presidency's office, through DTIC, because cross-border is not easy in Africa.
No, it's not at all.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
Good.
you.
I hope that gives you some insight.
I do. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are... Okay, we'll make it the last question, and then I'm going to call on...
Okay. Hi, everyone. My question is for you, Fatima. And I will speak on the trade exchanges and trade shows for brands that want to go beyond SA. You've spoken earlier about your partnership with the DTI and some funding and the rules and the restrictions on that. But is trade and investment looking to innovate in a space where you already have these relationships? You already know the good or secure trade shows that already exist or opportunities for small businesses. Some of us don't need the funding from DTI, but we do need assistance. If I want to go source fabric in Turkey, you already have the relationship. You already know where I can go and you can direct. Is the trade and investment space looking to innovate? Because I mean, we know, trying to get funding to go to the shows, there's so much red tape. But, if as a business, I'm innovative enough to say, no, I'm happy to take myself to Turkey, but I don't want to go to a place where I know no one and I don't know where to go. Can you guys help facilitate those secure meets in order for us to grow and expand?
Please do.
Okay, thank you. I think, yes, we do. We have a Gauteng office which deals specifically with relationships in different countries. We also have established relationships with other banks besides FNB. We have Albaraka, which has their bank counterparts within the different countries. And so we can facilitate those relationships and B2Bs. So that's not difficult at all. And I must say, and I'm going to stress this, we are under constraint in terms of funding. So guys, please understand. But once we do have, our budgets haven't been allocated yet. And if we do, and I'll be hoping that within the April 2025 to next year, March 2025, we are hoping to get some budgets to support medium-sized businesses and small businesses in the export and in the development stages. Thank you.
Good. Thank you very much. Folks, we're going to leave it at that. Big thank you to the panel. Thank you for giving up time to be here. Don, onward and upward. Banners on the moon. My suggestion is do a deal with India. They seem to be the first ones arriving at the moon across everyone else. Fatima Zanel, thank you very much. And Val, always, thank you for sustainability. We are now going to start wrapping up. I'm going to ask Ingrid Prenger to come up, please. She is the FNB KZN segment head. This is the segment that we're dealing with. To share a few closing remarks. And then I'm going to put a challenge to everyone as we... Yes. Go. Off you go. All of you.
No, I'm sure it's
Off
fine.
you go. Jokes.
Firstly, thank you to everyone for being such a captivating audience. And we trust that each and every single one of you has gained some valuable insight this morning that you can use in your personal life and in the business. We've been privy to a couple of key important factors this morning, but maybe just to summarize 3 of them that stood out for me. The importance of driving sustainable growth and innovation in your business, the valuable insights that were shared by the experienced members on navigating setbacks and overcoming barriers, and creating impactful discussions and using collaborations. As is clearly evident, FNB is fully committed and very passionate about supporting the textile industry, and we offer various tailor-made solutions to support you as the business. We therefore encourage all of you to reach out to FNB, have individual discussions. Please complete these items in here because each of you would be at a different phase in your business, in a different phase of growth. You would have different needs. And unless we can have that personalized discussion with you, we're not going to be able to reach out and offer you that personal attention and what might be working for your business. Please also see today as a starting point for further discussions and enhancements. The idea what we want to create today is to create a platform to stimulate further discussions, to encourage people to start collaborating, networking, thinking, how can we work together? How can we tackle this industry that has been identified as a green shoot in South Africa and develop further together? So we want to take a special moment just to thank the following stakeholders for all their valuable contributions. Thank you, Pavlo. Without your facilitating techniques this morning, it wouldn't have been a success. Koketso, our FNB economist. Norman, the CEO of Retailability. Yusuf, CFO of Kingsgate Clothing. Jay Pillay, KZN Regional Director of FNB Business. Don, CEO of Expand Design. Fatima, which is another F. Someone mentioned all the Fs. Clearly, you're going to remember a couple of them this morning. Sector Specialist for KZN Trade and Investment. Zanele of Durban Chamber of Commerce and Industry. And Valencia of FNB Sustainability. I'm now going to hand over for a last time to Pavlo.
Thank you. Thank you. Right, so what have we learned today? What are the 2 most valuable things we need that we have full control over? The 2 things we have full control over that determine our success or failure in life. Keep wanting to improve. That's an ambition. Yeah, ambition comes into it. This is something that steps beyond the ports. It steps beyond what may or may not happen with Trump. It steps beyond anything outside of our control. The first most, yes, relationships. No, not really. Because if you don't have them, you can create them. You find them at events like this. No, it's even simpler. Simpler. Time. We control our time. We control our time. And the second thing is, depending on where you apply your time, you can either have it wasted or made productive. The extent to which we apply our attention to what we are doing. And that goes to perseverance. It goes to ambition. We control our time and attention. And certainly, the advice I would share with you is don't dwell on things that you have absolutely no control over. Don't dwell on the ports. The ports will either come right or not come right. But until they do come right, apply time and attention on improving the productivity of your business or crafting opportunities that don't make you subject to ill performance at the ports. And the reason is this: time runs out for everybody. And to have a life lived where you sit back and say, you know what, if circumstances were different, when I was in the prime of building my business, maybe I would have a different outcome today. Let's really take a lesson from what seemed to be a very flippant statement from Don. He hopped onto a plane, bold, brave, stupid, and young, which are fantastic qualities, because you don't understand at that point what the risks and barriers are. And it's amazing when you have that mindset and you don't know what the risks are, you don't know what the barriers are. They don't exist. And if they don't exist, you make stuff happen. And to me, that is the single most valuable takeaway we can enjoy from today. So I thank you all for giving up your time and attention to be here. But your time and attention needs to be effectively applied to make the contacts, the connections, and hold accountable the commitments that were made on this panel around how individuals and their organizations can back you, want to back you, and if they can't back you, persist with them until they do, because they too then innovate and learn. Every time a bank or an organization, an institution says no to you, explain to them persistently why they need to say yes. If they can understand you, then they can care to understand what they need to do differently to serve you. It is our incumbent responsibility to do just that. I'd like to end off by calling Andrew Hudson, please, who's a regional director, to come and gift our panelists with jewels and, say again? Jewels, aren't they jewels? Yeah? Oh, cash checks. Thank you. Wedgwood are a fantastic KZN-based business. And, oh, wow. Oh, lovely. Thank you. Thank you. I wasn't expecting it. Thank you. There is a Future 50 show coming up soon on a Tuesday morning. We've already featured Wedgwood and spoke about the heritage of the business and how through their success they have gone and created jobs and created a brand of distinction born out of the soil of KZN. There's I think it's happening next week or the week after, pretty soon. There's a company called Seal Global that is making, and where's Val? You'll really like this. They're making adhesives out of plant-based materials, which means that the adhesives are entirely biodegradable. And instead of traditional paper pulp packaging, they have a paper pulp product that is entirely sustainable. And we went through KZN Future 50 and did a deal between Seal Global and Wedgwood Nougat in order to create packaging for nougat that is more environmentally friendly, which opens new export markets for them. It was the missing piece built as a barrier to trade into a certain European market. And with that, anyone who has not participated in KZN Future 50, please go to the ECR website, nominate a company that you believe, should they grow, will thrive and serve the prosperity of KZN or nominate your own. It is fantastic publicity, thanks to FNB Business backing it, that reaches over 1.4 million listeners. And in that listenership are your future clients, are your future employees, are your future suppliers, are your collaborators, are your points of access to the deals you need to get done. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. FNB Business, thank you very much for hosting us today.